So this is part 2 of our Politics 102 mini video lecture talking about the job of the corporate lobbyist. So we've talked about preparation and we've talked a little bit about penetration, and the third task, thinking about the job of a corporate lobbyist, is presentation. And that's really about making sure that what you are asking for is effective, it's clear, and it's persuasive. So it's not only thinking about the content of what the lobbyist is asking for, but how they're asking. That also entails being able to frame the issue. We talked a little bit about framing, but framing is really about taking a definitive approach or perspective on a political issue. So if you think about an actual picture frame and the fact that depending on where you put the frame, it influences or actually determines what an individual will see. So political issues are complicated and there are multiple perspectives that one can take to try to understand an issue. Thinking about, let's say, well, we usually use the example, let's use the example of gun control or First Amendment. Even that, so thinking about the use of guns in America, we could frame the issue in terms of a need for gun control. And that would lead us then to discuss some specific ideas around what does it mean to control guns. We could also frame the issue around our protecting our First Amendment rights, and then, or Second Amendment rights, sorry. And then that would open the door for us to discuss some specific issues that contribute to our understanding of the issue. So both ways of framing can address the same content, but how we frame the issue is how we define the issue, and that gives the framer a lot of power. So effective presentation is about making sure that the corporation, making sure that the lobbyist frames the issue in the right way so that their interest group has a more powerful position, so that the interests, the needs, the concerns of their interest group are what's really taken into account. But we also have to understand that framing an issue one way means that we cut off viewing the issue a different way, just as a picture frame can cut off certain parts of the picture. So it's really about how we define the problem. Another part of effective presentation is clearly identifying the ask. What is it you are asking the elected official to do? And another very interesting and important part of presentation is figuring out who the asker is. Do you want to find a legislator who will serve as a sponsor for a particular bill? Do you want to find legislators who will serve as allies or supporters of a particular bill? Do you want congressional leadership to do something in particular to kind of send a message that this is what the leadership stands for or stands behind? So you need to know what you want to ask, but also who the asker is. And sometimes with regards to lobbying firms, that also means maybe you would want to reach into a community and find an individual who would serve as a great spokesperson for a particular issue. So know what the ask is, but also know who the asker is. And the fourth P is perspiration, which really refers to effort. The fact that lobbying is going to require effort more than just kind of lurking in hallways. The lobbyist is going to have to be persistent in terms of reaching out to legislators, building those relationships, and a lot of effort is required to construct feasible policy alternatives so that, as I said before, when a lobbyist does get to the table, they have something substantive to offer. Political tools are another aspect of perspiration, is understanding what political tools the lobbyist has at their disposal. And there are some that are tangible and some that are intangible. So knowing about government, knowing about politics and how politics functions. We already mentioned political money, being able to access a political action committee and other funds maybe that the corporation has for political expenditures so that you can buy access and influence to legislators. Understanding that you have a strong staff and hiring staff that do have expertise in specific areas so that you can establish a good reputation as kind of the policy experts in certain areas. And then having strategic alliances, being part of coalitions that help broaden the appeal of the particular issue. And that helps move the issue from being kind of the private interests of a particular corporation, if you're part of a coalition, then that broadens the issue to help you to be able to say this is more of a public issue because there are multiple organizations, corporations, individuals who are impacted by it. So now wrapping up, thinking about the future of lobbying, your text talks about some structural changes, and those include the fact that there's increased diversity among the pool of lobbyists as well as among legislators, and we can think about gender diversity, ethnic diversity, sexuality diversity, and so with that diversity just comes a multitude of issues that the lobbyists are willing and able to address, and issues that the elected officials are concerned about. So that's one structural change. Another is that there are lobbying registration rules under the Honest Leadership and Open Government Act of 2007. So under these rules, lobbyists have to report the issues that they've lobbied, the issues that they have approached legislators about, and they have to report their campaign contributions. And there are ways that, of course, lobbyists and lobbying firms can try to get around these rules, but they at least take the rules seriously on their face because they know if they explicitly break the rule, then they can get referred to an ethics committee and be investigated. And that will actually come up in the film that we're going to watch over the next few days, Miss Sloan. So there are lobbying registration rules, and that is definitely a part of the future of lobbying as we move forward. And then thinking about the fact that we have a more polarized and partisan political marketplace. So again, this idea of the political marketplace it comes up frequently, and it's an important one. We talked about polarization, and we talked about partisanship. So one of the characteristics of the future of lobbying is what we call the state of permanent politics. So there used to be what we consider kind of a season for politics, during political campaigns, etc., but then a season for governance, where politicians, elected officials, had to kind of put their politics aside and actually try to work together to get policies passed. And that has changed significantly to the point where now there's just a current state of permanent politics. And that means that legislators, political parties, political action committees are looking for a state of permanent political advantage as opposed to looking for a win-win situation. They're looking to get themselves in a position where they are kind of permanently in power and in control of the narrative of public policies, etc., etc. And so ideology is driving this more so than a practical desire to get things done and to build common ground with other parties. Partisanship, now we are experiencing more of this kind of zero-sum partisanship rather than an interest in creating a win-win. So sometimes political parties find it necessary to be in a combative relationship, but more so than ever, the combative relationship or that partisanship has hardened and calcified so that there's rarely any time where any kind of bipartisan legislation is able to be moved through Congress. So partisanship is still considered to be part of the future of lobbying because members of the political parties and the party leadership have kind of hardened their views and made it more likely that members of the parties are going to try to toe the party line as opposed to building consensus by crossing party lines. Politicized research is an interesting aspect of, again, it's related to polarization in the state of permanent politics, but research is now a lot of political research. And when I say political research, I'm not thinking so much of academic research. I'm thinking more about research that comes out of think tanks, which are specifically focused on politics, but whereas that research used to be more kind of interested in identifying trends and providing tools around key concepts that all policymakers could use, now we see more politicized research with think tanks kind of being associated with specific political parties and creating research that is designed to push a particular political agenda or a particular ideology, which makes the conception of what is true and what are facts, it makes it much easier to challenge what is considered the truth and to ignore what are, even if they are proven facts. This environment makes it easier to ignore the facts. There's less of a concern with being fair and considering multiple perspectives on an issue, less concern with objectivity, which is a problematic concept. But when conducting research, that does kind of go back to this idea of fairness, being willing and open to consider perspectives, answers to your questions, reasons for political issues that may or may not align with one's own individual political views. So if one goes into a research project with preconceived notions of what they want to get out of the project, what do they want to find, and an agenda for, kind of using their research to support a particular political party, then that's problematic. And because it's still published and disseminated and called research, it contributes to kind of a distrust, a public distrust of research coming out of think tanks, but also research coming out of the academy. And it's also related to the distrust of the media and articles that are being produced there. So these are all kind of interrelated. And the last factor related to the future of lobbying is, once again, political money. So whereas in the past, lobbyists understood and corporations understood that, if they could contribute to a political campaign, their influence was greatly increased. Now they get multiple solicitations, multiple requests. So they may be asked to contribute to a legislator's political campaign, and they may be asked to contribute to their political action committee, and they may be asked to contribute to a congressional leadership committee. And so what lobbyists and corporations have to do is be able and willing to make kind of multiple contributions as opposed to just making one. The benefit that creates for them is now they have multiple access points to a particular legislator. So being able to double dip and triple dip, as the textbook calls it, it may be more onerous for the corporation because it may cost them more money, but they are also willing to do it because it buys them more access points. And as you recall, we had our discussion session with Angela and JR, and so that concludes the video lecture for Cigler Chapter 14. And just to note that coming up tomorrow on November 4th, we will discuss Almeida Chapter 7, Social Movement Outcomes, and we'll also see part of the film, Miss Sloan. So I will see you in class, and you can let me know if you have any questions.